They buried Mr. Martin on a Sunday, under gray skies that pressed down like a curse. The priest mumbled prayers, the villagers whispered, and the soil fell in dull, reluctant thuds over the old man's casket. But something in the air had shifted, something colder than the rain and heavier than the silence. By dusk, the winds that circled the Martin homestead began to howl, carrying a strange, whispering sound that prickled the backs of necks and rustled the dry banana leaves like breath from beneath the ground. That night, in 4 different corners of the country, 4 brown envelopes slid beneath doors, landed on dusty porches, or arrived without a stamp in the hands of strangers. The envelopes had no return address and no signature. All each envelope had was just one line on a crisp, aged paper. Come home, the inheritance waits. None of the siblings wanted to go back, but something in that message felt less like an invitation and more like a command. Sarah, the eldest of the 4 siblings, stepped off the matatu with a tight grip on her handbag and an even tighter grip on her past. When she arrived at their home, the Martins' residence, the gate hadn't changed. It had the same rust, same dented bell, and the same padlock hanging open like it was always waiting. The homestead stood crooked at the end of the path. It was a large, decaying house that was swallowed in vines and silence. The windows looked like blind eyes, with broken glass and curtains fluttering like pale tongues. She hesitated before walking in. In her bag was a rosary, worn smooth from years of fear-driven prayer. Next to it was a small silver knife. The small knife was not for protection, but for closure. Timothy, the second-born, arrived with a backpack slung over one shoulder and a cigarette tucked behind his ear. His limp was more pronounced now. The limp was either a gift from prison or a punishment from karma. He stood outside the house and stared at the old family portrait nailed to the front door. It was faded by sun and time. The image showed their mother smiling gently, Sarah stiffly formal, and Patrick barely tall enough to reach the frame. Mr. Martin stood in the middle, unsmiling. Timothy took the photo down. "We should have burned this place a long time ago," he muttered, then stepped inside. Beth, the third-born, didn't knock. She never knocked. She arrived in a private car that didn't belong on village roads, stepping out with polished boots and oversized sunglasses that covered half her face. The front door creaked open before she touched it, and she walked into the house like she still owned it. Dust, silence, the faint smell of wet wood and something older, something sour was what welcomed her. She dropped her suitcase by the stairs. "Let's get this over with," she said, loud enough for whoever was listening. They found Patrick, the last-born, in the sitting room, legs crossed on the ragged sofa, staring into a cold fireplace. Even when his siblings entered, he didn't move or blink. All he said was, "Dad didn't die in his sleep." His voice was quiet, but sharp. "That's what the doctor said. But I heard him the night before he died." He was whispering. No one spoke. No one asked what the whisper said. The room was too still, except from a clock on the wall that ticked just a little too loudly. On the table sat a brown envelope with all their names written in Mr. Martin's exact handwriting. Timothy opened it. Inside the envelope was an old cracked map of the property, and one line of text which read, "Only the one who unlocks the truth may inherit." Then, a second, smaller note fluttered out like a dead leaf. It read, "Do not trust." Beth rolled her eyes and said, "Typical Dad. Even when dead, he's still playing games." Patrick didn't laugh. He was staring at the wall. "Did anyone set the table?" he asked. No one answered, because no one had. Rain came fast, like it had been waiting all day to fall. Thunder cracked and the power died. Beth lit a candle and placed it near the window. its flame quivering like a frightened child. In the corridor, Sarah paused. She heard something, soft and familiar. It was a whisper, smooth and broken like dried leaves. "Sarah, don't let them open it." She turned sharply, but no one was there, only her own shadow. But it looked like it had moved just a little slower than she had. At the end of the hall stood the old study door. It was bolted shut with an iron lock, which had rusted with age. "It was always locked, even when we were kids," Sarah said. "I thought that was a myth," Timothy grunted, testing the knob. The floor beneath the door was scratched, like something had been dragged. In or out, they couldn't tell. Patrick stared at the bottom edge. "There's light coming from inside," he whispered. But there was no electricity. Beth reached out to touch the handle, but it burned her palm. She screamed in pain, and everyone jumped in panic. They decided to leave the door as it was and headed towards the dining table. The dining table was fully set. There were 5 plates, 5 cups, and stew in the pot, which was warm and steaming. Sarah backed away. "Who did this?" Timothy looked sick. "There's no gas connected and the stove's dead." Patrick moved to the 5th plate. He touched the rim. "It's mine," he said. "From when I was 7, Dad kept it after Mum died. No one had touched that plate in over 15 years. Beth lifted the lid on the stew. It was fresh, still bubbling. Something was very, very wrong. As the siblings argued about who made the food, about why the lights flickered when there was no power, the fireplace behind them flared. There was a sudden roar of flame, which was bright and unnatural. They turned, and just as quickly as it had flared, it died, and only ash remained. In the middle of the ash, something glowed. Timothy stepped forward, knelt, and reached into the warmth. He pulled it out slowly. It was a bone that was human-sized. It was fresh, and carved deep into the surface was the name, Timothy.